She was tomboyish too, but she had a cheeky side as well. Airplane. And she also focused a lot on school. She also had very big dreams for herself. Amina wanted to become a doctor when she grew up, so that's cool. Everyone thought that these two girls were normal. They thought they grew up quite normal. They acted normal. They had their friend groups. They had friends, best friends. They did normal kid-like things. The two kids were well-mannered, pretty, very pretty by the way, and popular. They both had a lot of plans for their future, but they realized from a young age that their lives would be drastically different from everyone else growing up in such a strict household. But they grew up in Bedford, Texas, in America, a free country, but they were living under the traditional rulings of Egypt, the place their father was born and raised. Their mother was a Southern Baptist, and her name is Patricia. Their Muslim father, Yasser, was very strict on them, and he made sure they followed his rules. He was also very strict on his wife, Patricia, who was also victim to his abuse. Patricia was only 15 years old when she married Yasser, who was 29 at the time, and that's a 14-year difference. Everyone in Patricia's life told her not to go through with it, that she was ruining her life, but Patricia's father agreed to the marriage, so the two got married. Patricia now says that she was never in love with Yasser, but her family was so poor at the time, she just wanted to leave the house, and Yasser promised her a better life. He had lots of land, he was rich, he had valuables in Egypt. He also convinced Patricia's dad that he would be able to take care of his daughter. He bragged about his money, said he would take care of Patricia, treat her with respect, all that. And for the first couple months of their marriage, Yasser was pretty good. He was very sweet and he took care of her. 6 or 7 months later, things changed drastically. Patricia had to work all the time, like 24/7, because Yasser refused to work. And he was also revealing himself to be quite the tyrant. He wanted more control. He didn't want to let Patricia have any contact with her family because he was an Egyptian Muslim and Patricia's family was white Americans, so he thought that they were trash to him. Like, Yasser didn't like Americans. He didn't like anything American. Aisha moved out with her daughters and reported the incident to the police. But suddenly, out of nowhere, Amina and Sarah dropped the charges against their father. Their aunt Jill knew it was because their mother and father had forced them to drop the charges. Tell them they made it up to keep him out of jail. Yasser continued to abuse them after this until their teen years. But no more allegations were made about the abuse. But there were many very uncomfortable home videos to watch where Yasser was recording the girls sleeping and he was being very weird around them, and Amina caught him and told him that it was illegal, and it was very clear she was uncomfortable with him. Yasser also didn't want anybody else to look at his daughters without his approval. He believed heavily in arranged marriages and no boyfriends allowed. They weren't allowed to date. Yasser took Amina to Egypt when she was 16 years old and tried to marry her to a 47-year-old man. A 16-year-old to a 50-year-old man, basically. In what world does that seem okay to you? But gladly, Amina rejected the marriage and they didn't go through with it. But Amina knew that her father had plans to put her and her younger sister in forced marriages as soon as he could. That is why they went to Egypt during the summer, so he could introduce Amina, or like his daughters, to the highest bidders so that he could sell his daughters. The girls were horrified. They wanted to live free lives like their older brother, Islam, who had much more freedom than these two girls, because Islam was a boy, and in Yasser's eyes, the boys in the family should be much more respected and they could do whatever they wanted to do with their lives. He was free from Yasser's abuse, whereas the girls were monitored. Every movement of his daughters he was watching. He bugged their cars, checked their phones, their computers. He would follow them to work and watch them through the windows. And this is the part of the story that led Yasser to becoming very angry with his girls. The part of the story that ultimately leads to Yasser murdering his two daughters. Amina had a boyfriend named Joseph, and they thought of themselves as modern-day Romeo and Juliet, a love so deep it was worth dying for. On Amina's end, Joseph had fallen in love at first sight. They were young teenagers in the same martial arts class, and Joseph said that when he saw her, he just knew. And Amina felt the same. They were together almost every day of the week, and not much longer after they met, they began to date, and their relationship got quite serious. They were like bound at the heart for the next 4 years, even wanting to get married. Like, this was no teenage romance, and I could tell from listening to the way that Joseph talked about her. I'm sorry, this was no teenage romance. Like, these two were in it for real, and I wish such a horrible thing didn't have to happen to her, because like, love like this does not come around often. So that was really heartbreaking to me. But anyways, back to the story. They wanted to get married. Like, that is how serious they were. And Joseph's mother loved Amina. She was gorgeous for Joseph and Amina had to keep their relationship on the down low. Amina had a separate phone her dad didn't know about. She put Joseph under a different name. They couldn't be seen in public together. She told Joseph that if he ever saw her father around, that he and his mom had to run and contact the police. She was terrified of her father finding out about their relationship. And, Joseph and Amina were best friends, they could tell each other anything. She opened up to him about her father's abuse, and he would go to her on bad days, and she would make it all right. And she told, what else? They would trade love notes every single day, and this was all great and fun until Amina's father, Yasser, found one of their love notes. Immediately, he was full of anger, and he became extremely angry. He wanted to know who Joseph was. He wanted to know his name, where he was, where he lived, how did they meet, things like that. And he beat Amina non-stop. He forced her to tell her where Joseph was. She refused. She didn't tell him a single thing about Joseph because she wanted to protect him. And this made Yasser very angry, like even more, and he beat her nonstop. Within days, he relocated his whole family 20 miles away and cut them off from everyone they knew. Joseph and Amina completely lost connection. They went from speaking hours every day to nothing at all. Amina wouldn't contact him because she wanted to keep him safe, and it was at this point Amina knew she was going to die. She even tried to end her own life with her father's gun, saying she knew he was going to take her life with it, and she wanted to make it easier on him by just doing it herself. So she knew she was going to die. It was hopeless. Meanwhile, Yasser was still trying to set up an arranged marriage for Amina, and she rejected again, of course. He was infuriated, and he pulled a gun out on both of his daughters and threatened to end their lives. Both girls realized they had to run away to save themselves, and they had enough. They had to leave, and their mother decided to leave with them, left to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and leased an apartment there, throwing their SIM cards away so Yasser couldn't track them. They got new phones, and Amina called Joseph to tell him she was safe and their love was still there. But Yasser slowly started to encourage Patricia to come back home with her daughters. Patricia ended up calling she's yelling, she's screaming, I'm dying, like, and while she's on the phone, like, calling 911, her dad is shooting at her while she is on the phone, and she's like, my dad is shooting at me, like, please come quick. And he keeps on going until her last breath, which can be heard on the phone call, and it is horrible. More time passes. 911 gets another call about a taxi at a taxi stand that has 2 dead bodies, one in the front, one in the back. The police arrive and they find both girls dead. Amina is dead from 2 gunshot wounds, and Sarah was dead from 9 gunshot wounds. Cops find the 2 girls, and no driver is to be found. And in her condition, Sarah identified her killer. If she did not call 911 and go, my dad is shooting at me, think of how much investigative work would have to go into, like, making sure that it was actually Yasser that killed his daughters. And imagine, like, he could have went free. Like, she just completely solved the case within minutes. She was so strong. And now this is a double homicide, and the killer is their own father, Yasser Saeed, but he has escaped and is nowhere to be found. They look through the entire area, their home, everyone is completely heartbroken over it. Their grandparents, their friends, their aunts, these girls, remember, they were popular, they were kind, well-mannered. Many people felt the loss. No one could believe how Patricia let such an abusive father reconnect with his daughters. It was just so annoying to me. But investigators did say that this was because of the years of abuse that